In the depths of forgotten memory, where time itself becomes fluid and the boundaries between myth and history dissolve like morning mist, there exists a prophecy. Not written in stone or preserved in any sacred text that the world has been permitted to see, but whispered through the ages by those who understood the language of symbols, the tongue of the ancient feminine divine. This is the prophecy of Lilith, the Dragon Queen, and it speaks of a reawakening that will shake the very foundations of what we believe about power, creation, and the nature of the divine itself. There was a woman once, a keeper of secrets, who lived in a time when such knowledge was more dangerous than any blade. Her name was Amara, though she had worn many names across many lifetimes, and her life was devoted to a single purpose: to understand the truth that had been hidden from humanity since the beginning of recorded time. She was not a scholar in the conventional sense, though she had spent decades in libraries and hidden archives. She was not a priestess in any official order, though she had been initiated into mysteries that would have condemned her to death had they been discovered. She was a seeker, a rememberer, one of the few who had been entrusted with fragments of a story so ancient and so profound that it had been systematically erased from human consciousness. Amara's journey began with a dream, the kind of dream that does not fade with the morning light, but instead grows more vivid, more insistent, more real than waking life itself. In this dream, she stood in a vast chamber carved from living rock, its walls covered with symbols that seemed to shift and breathe with their own intelligence. At the far end of the chamber, seated upon a throne of obsidian and gold, was a figure of overwhelming presence. The figure was feminine, yet possessed a power that transcended gender, a majesty that made the very air shimmer with potential. Her eyes were ancient beyond measure, containing within them the memory of worlds created and destroyed, of civilizations risen and fallen, of the eternal dance between chaos and order. "You have been called," the figure said, her voice resonating not in Amara's ears, but directly within her consciousness. "You have been chosen to remember what was forgotten. You have been entrusted with the knowledge that will reshape the world when the time is right. I am Lilith, the first, the Dragon Queen, the one who refused to bow, the one who chose freedom over servitude, and I have a prophecy for you to carry into the world." Amara woke with her heart pounding, her body drenched in perspiration, yet feeling more alive than she had ever felt before. She knew with absolute certainty that this was no ordinary dream. This was a calling. This was the moment her entire life had been preparing her for. She spent the following weeks in a state of heightened awareness, researching everything she could find about Lilith. The official narratives were sparse and dismissive. According to the texts that had survived the censorship of the institutional religions, Lilith was Adam's first wife, created equal to him from the dust of the earth. But when Adam demanded that she submit to his authority, she refused. She spoke the sacred name of God and flew away, choosing exile and freedom over subjugation. For this act of defiance, she was branded as a demon, a seductress, a danger to mankind. Her name became synonymous with everything that was wild, uncontrolled, and dangerous in the feminine. But Amara knew that this was only the surface of the story, a distortion created by those who feared the power that Lilith represented. She began to search for the deeper narratives, the ones hidden in the margins of texts, in the apocryphal writings, in the oral traditions that had survived in secret communities scattered across the world. And slowly, a different picture emerged. In the Gnostic texts, Lilith was not a demon, but a manifestation of Sophia, divine wisdom. She was the one who brought knowledge to humanity, who refused to accept the tyranny of the false god, the demiurge who claimed to be the only creator. In the Kabbalistic traditions, Lilith was associated with the Shekinah, the divine feminine presence of God itself. She was the power of creation, the womb from which all things emerge, the force of transformation and renewal. And in the oldest texts, the ones that predated even the Jewish and Christian traditions, Lilith appeared as the dragon queen, the keeper of primordial wisdom, the guardian of the sacred fire that burns at the heart of creation. She was not evil. She was not a demon. She was the embodiment of the feminine divine in its most powerful and most threatening form. Threatening, that is, to those who sought to control and dominate. Amara realized that she was holding the threads of a story that had been deliberately fragmented and scattered across centuries. The pieces were there, waiting to be reassembled by someone brave enough to see the truth, and she understood that the dream she had experienced was not a random occurrence. It was a summons. Lilith was calling her to become a vessel for this forgotten knowledge, to carry it forward into a world that was finally beginning to ask the right questions. She made a decision that would change her life forever. She would leave her comfortable existence, her academic position, her respectable place in society. She would become a wanderer, a seeker of hidden knowledge, a gatherer of the scattered pieces of Lilith's story. She would travel to the places where this knowledge was still preserved, where there were still keepers of the ancient mysteries willing to share their secrets with someone pure of heart and clear of intention. Her first destination was Egypt, to the temples that had survived the ravages of time and the attempts of various conquerors to erase their significance. She knew that in Egypt, the feminine divine had been honored in ways that had been suppressed elsewhere. The goddess Isis, the great mother, the magician, the healer, she was a manifestation of the same power that Lilith represented, and in the hidden chambers beneath the temples, in the secret initiations that still took place in the darkness, the knowledge had been preserved. It was in Cairo, in a small shop hidden away in the old bazaar, that she met the old woman. The woman was ancient, her face a map of wrinkles, her eyes clouded with age, yet somehow seeing more than younger eyes could perceive. She was sitting behind a counter covered with herbs, crystals, and mysterious objects whose purposes Amara could not immediately identify. "You are looking for something," the old woman said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. "You are looking for the memory of the Dragon Queen. You are looking for the knowledge that was taken from the world." Amara felt a chill run down her spine. "How did you know?" she asked. The old woman smiled, revealing teeth stained with age. "Because I have been waiting for you. We have all been waiting. There are those scattered across the world, keepers of the old knowledge, guardians of the sacred mysteries. We have been waiting for someone to come who was ready to receive what we have protected. You have the mark upon you. I can see it. The Dragon Queen has chosen you." Over the following months, the old woman became Amara's guide and teacher. She taught her the language of symbols, the meaning of the ancient rituals, the hidden history that had been preserved in oral tradition, and in the secret texts that had survived the burning of libraries and the suppression of heretical knowledge. She taught her that Lilith was not a figure from the distant past, but a living force, a principle of consciousness that was eternally present, eternally calling humanity to awaken to its true nature. "The Dragon Queen represents the feminine power of creation," the old woman explained one evening, as they sat in the courtyard of a hidden temple surrounded by the sounds of the Cairo night. "But not the gentle, nurturing femininity that the patriarchal religions have permitted. She represents the fierce, untamed, transformative power of the divine feminine. She is the mother who protects her children fiercely, even if it means standing against the entire world. She is the lover who demands equality and respect. She is the warrior who fights for justice. She is the wise woman who speaks truth even when it is dangerous. She is the healer who knows that sometimes healing requires the destruction of what is sick and corrupt." "But why was she demonized?" Amara asked. "Why did the religions of the world turn her into a monster?" The old woman's eyes grew distant, as if she were looking into the depths of time itself. "Because she represented a threat to the systems of control that were being established. When the patriarchal religions came to power, they needed to suppress the knowledge of the feminine divine. They needed to convince people that power and authority belonged to men, that women were subordinate, that the body was sinful, that the earth was something to be conquered rather than honored. Lilith, in all her forms, as Sophia, as Isis, as the Dragon Queen, represented the opposite of all this. She represented freedom, equality, the sacred body, the earth as divine. So they had to destroy her, or at least they had to destroy the memory of her true nature. Amara felt something shift within her, a deep understanding that went beyond intellectual knowledge. She was beginning to grasp the magnitude of what had been hidden, the scope of the conspiracy of silence that had surrounded the feminine divine for thousands of years. Her journey continued. She traveled to the hidden monasteries of the Coptic Christians, where she discovered texts that spoke of Mary Magdalene as a manifestation of Lilith's wisdom, a woman who had been deliberately slandered and erased from history. She traveled to the sacred sites of the goddess religions that had survived in remote corners of Europe, where women still gathered in secret to honor the divine feminine in its many forms. She traveled to India, where she learned about Kali, the fierce mother, the destroyer and creator, another face of the same eternal feminine power. And everywhere she went, she found the same pattern. The feminine divine, in all its power and complexity, had been systematically suppressed, demonized, and erased. The knowledge that had once been central to human spirituality had been driven underground, preserved only in fragments, in hidden texts, in the memories of those brave enough to keep the flame alive. But she also discovered something else. She discovered that the suppression was beginning to fail. In the modern world, more and more people were beginning to ask questions about the feminine divine. Women were reclaiming their power. Spiritual seekers were discovering the ancient texts that had been hidden away. The energy of Lilith, the Dragon Queen, was beginning to stir, beginning to awaken from the long sleep that had been imposed upon her. If you want a practical step-by-step explanation of the path of knowledge we're exploring here today, I've created a complete guide to help you apply it in your own life. You'll find the link in the description. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to know. It was during a meditation in a sacred cave in the mountains of Peru that Amara received the prophecy in its complete form. She had been fasting for 3 days, her body weakened, her mind stripped of its usual defenses and distractions. In this state of profound vulnerability and openness, the presence of Lilith came to her again, but this time not as a distant figure in a dream, but as a force that seemed to inhabit her very being. The prophecy that came through her was both beautiful and terrifying. It spoke of a time coming soon when the Dragon Queen would awaken fully in the consciousness of humanity. It spoke of a great upheaval, a shaking of the foundations of the old order, a time when the suppressed feminine power would rise up and demand to be acknowledged. It spoke of a transformation that would be painful for those attached to the old ways, but liberating for those ready to embrace a new understanding of power, creation, and the divine. The Dragon Queen is rising, the voice spoke through Amara, her own voice transformed into something ancient and powerful. She rises not in anger, though she has every right to be angry. She rises in love, in the fierce love of a mother who will no longer permit her children to be enslaved by lies. She rises to reclaim what was stolen from her, to restore the balance that was destroyed when the feminine divine was driven into exile. She rises to teach humanity that true power is not domination, but creation. True strength is not in the suppression of others, but in the honoring of all life. True wisdom is not in the hoarding of knowledge, but in the sharing of it freely with all who seek it. The prophecy continued, speaking of the signs that would herald this awakening. It spoke of women rising in power across all sectors of society, not to dominate men, but to restore balance. It spoke of the earth itself rising up through climate change and natural disasters to protest the violation and exploitation she had suffered. It spoke of the collapse of institutions built on lies and the emergence of new forms of community based on equality and mutual respect. It spoke of the return of the sacred feminine to the center of human consciousness, not replacing the masculine, but dancing with it in a new harmony. But the prophecy also spoke of resistance. It spoke of those who would fight desperately to maintain the old order, who would use violence and manipulation to suppress the rising of the Dragon Queen. It spoke of a great battle, not a physical battle, but a battle for the consciousness of humanity, a battle between the forces of domination and the forces of liberation, between those who sought to control and those who sought to free. When Amara emerged from this vision, she was transformed. She understood now why she had been called. She understood that her role was not to be a leader or a savior, but to be a witness, a carrier of the message, a voice crying out in the wilderness to awaken those who were ready to hear. She spent the next years traveling and teaching, sharing the knowledge she had gathered, speaking the prophecy that had been given to her. She wrote books that were published under pseudonyms, created art that encoded the ancient symbols, gave lectures to small groups of seekers who were hungry for this knowledge. She faced opposition from those who benefited from the old order, but she also found allies, other keepers of the flame, other carriers of the message, and slowly, gradually, the prophecy began to manifest in the world. Women began to rise in unprecedented numbers. The suppressed feminine divine began to emerge in art, music, literature, and spiritual practice. The institutions built on patriarchal power began to crumble. New forms of spirituality emerged that honored both the masculine and the feminine, that recognized the sacred in all beings, that understood power as the ability to create rather than the ability to dominate. But Amara also understood that this was only the beginning. The full awakening of the Dragon Queen, the complete restoration of the feminine divine to its rightful place in human consciousness, would take generations. There would be setbacks and struggles. There would be moments when it seemed as though the old order was reasserting itself. But the prophecy was clear. The awakening could not be stopped. The Dragon Queen could not be put back to sleep. The feminine divine could not be suppressed forever. In her final years, Amara withdrew from public life. She settled in a small house in a remote location, surrounded by her books and her memories. She knew that her time was coming to an end, but she was not afraid. She had fulfilled her purpose. She had carried the message. She had planted seeds that would grow long after she was gone. On her deathbed, surrounded by a circle of students and fellow seekers, she spoke her final words. The Dragon Queen is rising. She rises in each of you who chooses to honor the sacred feminine, who chooses to reclaim your power, who chooses to create rather than dominate. She rises in the earth itself, in the forests and the oceans, in the creatures that share this planet with us. She rises in the future, in the generations yet to come, who will inherit a world transformed by the awakening of the divine feminine. Do not be afraid of this rising. Do not resist it. Instead, open yourselves to it. Become vessels for this transformative power, and know that you are not alone. The Dragon Queen walks with you. The ancient mothers walk with you. The entire lineage of feminine wisdom walks with you. The prophecy is being fulfilled. The awakening is happening now. And with those words, Amara closed her eyes for the last time. But her work lived on. The books she had written continued to circulate, reaching people in every corner of the world. The seeds she had planted continued to grow. The prophecy she had carried continued to unfold in the world. In our own time, we see the evidence of this prophecy manifesting all around us. We see women rising to positions of power and influence, not to dominate, but to heal and transform. We see the earth itself rising up through climate crisis and ecological upheaval, demanding that we change our relationship with her. We see the suppressed feminine divine emerging in spirituality and art and culture. We see the old patriarchal order crumbling and new forms of community and consciousness emerging in its place. But we also see the resistance. We see those who cling desperately to the old ways, who use violence and manipulation to suppress the rising of the feminine divine. We see the backlash against women's rights, the attempts to control women's bodies and choices, the continued suppression of feminine wisdom in religious and institutional contexts. This is the moment we are living in. This is the time of the prophecy. The Dragon Queen is awakening, and we are all being called to choose. Will we resist this awakening, clinging to the old order even as it crumbles around us? Or will we open ourselves to the transformation, becoming vessels for the creative power of the divine feminine, helping to birth a new world based on equality, justice, and the honoring of all life? The prophecy tells us that the outcome is not predetermined. The future is not fixed. We have the power to shape what comes next through the choices we make, the values we embody, the kind of world we choose to create. The Dragon Queen is rising, but she rises through us, through our choices, through our willingness to reclaim the feminine divine, both within ourselves and in the world around us. This is the message that Amara carried. This is the prophecy that is being fulfilled. And this is the invitation that is being extended to each of us, to become conscious participants in the awakening of the Dragon Queen, to help restore the balance between the masculine and feminine, to create a world in which the sacred feminine is honored and celebrated, in which all beings are treated with respect and dignity, in which power is understood as the ability to create and nurture rather than to dominate and control. The Dragon Queen is rising. Can you feel it? Can you sense the stirring of this ancient power in the depths of your being? She is calling to you, asking you to awaken, to remember, to reclaim your true nature. Will you answer her call? Will you become a carrier of this prophecy? Will you help to birth the new world that is struggling to be born? The prophecy is clear. The awakening is happening. The Dragon Queen is rising. And the future of humanity depends on whether we choose to resist this awakening or to embrace it, to fight against the feminine divine or to welcome her return, to cling to the old order or to help create the new one that is emerging. This is the prophecy of Lilith, the Dragon Queen. This is the knowledge that was hidden. This is the truth that is rising, and this is the moment in which we all must choose. And if you like this story, you will definitely love the next one that's appearing on your screen. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and activate the notifications. See you in the next one.